Happy, what day is it? Wednesday? Thursday. It is Thursday. I've lost track of the days. And welcome to The Splash. These are short conversations with friends. This afternoon, you guys, I have the pleasure of interviewing and having a very cool conversation with one of my friends, Jamila Jackson, the owner of Loved and Blessed. You guys, she is stealth secret bomber. She's super sweet, and you will never know. She's a heavy hitter the way that she is. This girl, let me just tell you, you'll see in a second, super, super sweet. But when I tell you she knows her stuff as it pertains to business, I'm just so grateful to have her on my team as a friend, as a mentor. And I'm excited to be able to bring her to you at this year's Laundry Day Virtual Women's Conference. That's right. It's going down March 19th and 20th. If you have not already gotten your wheels turning or curious about what that is, this Sunday, February 14th, which happens to be Valentine's Day, do yourself a favor and love on yourself a little bit and invest in yourself for this virtual women's conference. This you do not want to miss. Registration opens on Sunday. I am so excited to be able to partner with my friend, none other than Miss Jamila Jackson. Hey, Jamila.
Hey, girl.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We're getting closer.
I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's almost March.
I know.
It's insane.
I know. It's really, my birthday is March starts our birthday barrage in our house. My son's birthday starts it off March 16th, and then we don't end until April 18th. But by the time we end, all four of us have gone.
Yes.
And so you can imagine financially, you go from Valentine's Day to birthday season to Mother's Day to Father's Day.
It sounds like your house doesn't get a break from the birthday gift season.
Listen, my husband just texted me today, was like, can we pass on Valentine's Day? I was like, sure, sweetheart, it's fine. Like, I know you love me, so that's cool. All right, so listen, you guys, I want to get into our conversation today about restoration. But before we do, I want to take care of a few housekeeping things. First off, if you do not know Jamila, you need to know her. That means you need to follow her over on Instagram and Facebook and check out this very special thing that she does called Loved and Blessed. You guys, listen. So look at this down here. Make sure that you take a moment, go over to your phones and follow. And look at the subscription box. Look, we have we have a special surprise and a treat for some of you at the end. So first, I want to make sure you're doing that. Then if you have not already followed us, make sure you also follow us on IG. That's Campaign P31 on both Facebook and IG. But if you want to get more content like this, you can follow us and subscribe over at YouTube at Julie and Alexis, which is my name, not Campaign P31, so don't get it confused. And last but not least, if you are not on our email list, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? We're trying to get you some information. We're trying to make sure you're fully updated on all the things that are going on in Campaign P31, and you don't want to miss them. So make sure you sign up today. All right, cool. I took care of all that business. And then as normal, there's some kind of chime on my computer that I don't know where it is, so I can't.
I was like, wait, was that mine?
No, that was mine. That's right. You got a calendar reminder for something. All right, so let's talk about restoration. So I want to frame this whole conversation by painting this picture for our viewers. Our community of women who might not always understand what you might need to be restored from, right? So I want to paint this picture. I think sometimes it's easy for us to understand what it means to heal from a physical hurt or a natural hurt, but not necessarily the emotional hurts and pains. And so here's the thought, and this might get a little gory for some of y'all, but just follow me. So pain is like a wound. It's like the scab and the healing, they take place on the surface as long as you don't interrupt that scab, right? You know what that's like. Imagine, just flash back to when you were a kid and when you had that bad bicycle accident and you scarred up your legs or something, or your elbow. The pullback of that scab is a setback. Everybody knows that, right? It's the reminder that you went through the original experience of hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And then as it starts to heal, what you look for is a certain stage in the healing process where the scab will eventually absorb back into the skin. And you know, like, okay, this thing is almost healed completely. It tells you what's really going on underneath the surface. The scab is the indicator on the surface of what's going on under the surface. Yeah. Here's what happens. If you pull back the scab before it's completely absorbed, now you take the risk of potentially exposing a pre-existing wound to bacteria, infection, all of the not so nice, oozy, pussy kind of situations that life can sometimes bring us. I just want to paint the picture. I'm sorry. Like,
yeah, you're doing a good job.
But that's what emotional pain feels like.
Yeah.
And so I think for many of us, we're like, well, how do we navigate that? And I know for a long time I was stuck and I could not figure it out until I found this scripture that said this. 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11 says this. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice, strive for full restoration. Yeah. Encourage one another, of one mind, and live in peace. Yeah. And the God of love and peace will be with you. Yeah. So my question was like, well, how do I get from how I feel with this emotional scar that this person or relationship, business relationship, family relationship, situations in life have sometimes, how do I get from here to there? Because I don't even want to be bothered. I can't imagine trying to get to a point of peace. I can't even imagine what it would look like to be fully restored. So how do you actively strive for full restoration in your life and your relationships? What does it look like, Jamila?
I mean, that's it's a huge question, right? And it might be a little bit different depending on the situation. Your illustration was very, very vivid because it's real, right? Real talk. I would say that for me personally, it's interesting. The topic of restoration is one that I'm really passionate about because, a lot of people can relate. Like, I've been through seasons where I actually had to restore my relationship with God. And I also have been through seasons where I needed to focus on restoring a relationship with a person or a group of people. And so for me, restoration has looked a little bit different in each of those seasons, but ultimately it comes down to humility for me. And I think that's probably been the biggest struggle, when I felt like, restoration is really ultimately returning to the former condition of something, right? So it's like me being a Christian, feeling like I have this solid relationship with God, and then going through infertility and questioning him and being angry at him, to be honest, and kind of going through that season, and then having to go through this season of restoring that relationship. And it's the same thing in personal relationships where I've, been in situations where I've done something to inadvertently hurt someone and it's broken our relationship, or they've done something and it's really been painful for me. And to me, it's kind of been different in each situation, but the common thread has been the humbleness that it's taken for either me or that other person, or for both of us, to just say, like, our relationship is what I want to get back to. I want to restore what we had. And I know that this situation, this thing you said, this thing I did was one thing, and it might be something I need to repent about. It might be something I need to, ask forgiveness over. But ultimately what I want is to restore that peace, that relationship, that love that we had.
Yeah.
And, that to me is what restoration is. It's just humbling ourselves.
Oh, I love that. I love the humbling part, because I think that is one of the very first steps. Like, if you are at the point where, there's stages to this thing, there's stages to this process. And if you have to do a self-evaluation of where you actually are, are you at the beginning stages? Like when something is fresh and it just happened. And I think you need time to start applying the preliminary step, which is prayer. Yeah. And you need time and space to start to exercise what forgiveness might look like.
Yep.
Right. And then before you can approach the idea of restoration, And all of that, I mean, if you are in those earlier stages, you are already being humbled.
Yeah.
Because especially, it depends. If you're refusing to be obedient to God,
right,
then you're not in a place to be softened enough to be humbled to say, hey, Lord, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I approached this the incorrect way.
Right.
And then I think you brought up another great point where you're talking about between two people. Because later, I think at the end of this conversation, we're going to talk about what are understanding the difference between restoration and reconciliation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, because I didn't understand, I thought that they were synonymous.
Right.
I thought they were the same. But as I dug deeper, I realized like, oh, there are some relationships that I will be restored from, but we will not be reconciled. And it's okay.
Right.
right. But then there are other relationships that I will be restored, they will be restored, and we will be reconciled together.
Right.
So I guess my question is, at the point where you're now humbled, how do you change the narrative in your mind? How do you start telling yourself a different story? Like, okay, every time you see this person or you have to deal with this situation, how do you start to reframe the way that you look at it?
Yeah. Well, and that's actually huge for me because I'm a person who has suffered through my life with clinical depression and anxiety and some other things. And so that narrative, the story that I'm kind of telling myself in my own head, is huge, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like, I think that it's spiritual warfare and like distractions that are just kind of around us in the world that keep the kind of negative narrative or allow us to be so focused in on this either narrative of, I hurt this person, they say they've forgiven me, but I don't really believe it. And so that gets in the way of restoring the relationship because there's some level of shame or whatever that you have. Because I know I've been in that position. And then the same thing on the other end of it, if you're the one who's been hurt, it's that narrative of like, well, they didn't really, mean, that apology, or like they just apologized to smooth it over, but I don't think that they really meant it. And then you see things, I've had situations where there's been a blip in a relationship, and then, I talk to a friend, and then you'll see somebody, they'll post something on social media or whatever, and it just kind of hits you again, right? And it's like, and
those not for relationships at all. It's supposed to be social. Well, we end up hurting each other.
No. So. But I mean, I think that's the thing, though, is like we have to I always say that I try to see each person and situation through God's eyes, right? Again, it still comes back to that humility thing of like, this person hurt me, regardless of what what they're now doing. I'm trying to change the narrative in my head, right? I'm trying to shift us into a place of starting to restore our relationship. And so I'm not going to let anything else get in the way of that, regardless of what I see them post or what I heard from a friend said this, like none of that. Can you allow to get into your head? And I guess, like I said, I link it back to spiritual warfare too, where it's like there are relationships I've had for 20 years, and then one thing happens, and I really have to start to stop those negative thoughts that I feel like the enemy sends that try to continue to destroy something that clearly God meant for the long term.
Yeah.
So again, it's just coming back to that humbleness of like getting us back on track as friends.
Gotcha. I think there's so many things that you said in that last segment, but I feel like, hold on, we gotta do a little adjustment. The sun started moving and shifting. Listen, but that's all right. We have what we call lighting for that.
There you go. Lighting is good.
I know, right? So I think the next stage is, in light of what you said, is how then do I allow for people to come close, to practice the sincerity of the relationship, while at the same time kind of maintain maybe new boundaries, or like, but you want them close, but not that close, and you got to kind of spoon feed them at first. Like, how do you, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to get hurt.
Yeah.
I'm trying to regrow my trust in this relationship and reestablish that. But at the same time, I feel, or do we not have to be concerned with whether we're going to get hurt or not? Can we just cast that on the Father? Or, or should we do something on our own too? Like, it's a lot of questions around that.
Yeah. Well, because I think that's the thing too. Like, I'm a big believer in life application and not just, I love to encourage people. So it's like, I'll say things that might sound a little bit cliche, but
Oh
they're
yeah,
really,
I forgot to tell y'all, she is the chief encouragement officer of her business. Instead of CEO, like executive officer, she's in chief encouragement officer. Okay, I forgot to say that. Go ahead.
But like with that, for me, it's like I do think we have to give it to the Father, right? Like that biblically, we are supposed to go to him with everything, be at his feet, praying, asking for guidance, all of those things. But we do have to put in some work. And so me personally, one of the things that's helped me, I like to kind of give practical tips. One of the things that's helped me is literally like journaling, but journaling very specifically. So, in that situation that I had where I know I actually hurt my friend, again, it was unintentional, but it doesn't matter. I still hurt her, right? She came to me about it. And I was kind of shocked at first. I was like, what? Because that wasn't what I intended at all, right? But I had to listen and be open to hearing, right, what she had to say, regardless of my intentions. Yeah. I had to be able to be open to hear it. And then I really spent a lot of time journaling specifically, what has our relationship been up to this point, right? What have we been through together before? Literally just listing these things out. It doesn't have to have any specific format, but I somehow, for me, putting it down on paper before I go to the Lord, and then I have something to pray through. I'm like, Lord, we've been through this together. You brought us through this. Here's what I've learned from this friend. I love this about her. I repent of this thing that I did that's hurt her. And you can do the same thing in reverse. If you're the one who's hurt, it's like, I've known this person for 20 years. They were there at my wedding. They might've been your maid of honor. Like, we went to college together. They helped me through a really tough time. I find that not focusing on that moment of hurt, but actually looking back over it helps me at least get to the point that then I can pray, and then I can figure out what are my boundaries going forward, or I like to call them deal breakers. Like kind of what are my deal breakers in this relationship going forward? If this, or this happens, again, maybe I do need to say we need to be kind of cut off, right? Because there are times where you do have to remove some people from your life or remove yourself from situations. But there are other times where I really do feel like that situation is as much for our growth as it might be for the other person's. And so as painful as it is, we do have to be willing to be hurt again, but trust that God has a purpose in that.
That's good. So you're hopeful that it will, you're leaning toward the hope that it can be fully restored, which I think is a mindset that almost gives you it could give you a positive outcome in the direction you're heading or you're trying to go, So now I guess this is a good place to ask that question about, well, what then is the real difference for you between restoration and reconciliation? And then like you started to mention some of the determining factors for whether or not you felt like a relationship or and I keep saying relationships. I don't want people to think like spousal relationships or just like, family or even friends. I want you to think about business relationships. I also want you to think about partnerships that you might have. I want you to think about if you're sitting on the board of another like situation, like whether this is healthy for both partners, right? You're both like, in the terms of science, symbiotic relationships. Remember?
Right. Yeah.
Making sure that thing is right. And also, here's a big one. Ordained by God. See, most of the time we'll pray about stuff, like I'm gonna pray about it, but you don't wait to hear what he has to say. So what do you think about waiting to hear what God has to say? What do you think about this concept of restoration and reconciliation? Tell me about it.
Yeah. I mean, the waiting to hear what God has to say part is probably the hardest, because when you're in pain and somebody's hurt you, or vice versa, you've hurt someone else, like you want to fix it right away. Like you just want to either get over it or you want to fix the relationship so everybody's happy again. And sometimes, and I know for me personally, that's when we act without God. And so it's almost like we try to fix it, but then we put a Band-Aid on it, and then the relationship has a crack, 2 weeks later because the issue wasn't resolved. And so I think that's our rushing ahead of kind of where God has us, or what he's trying to take us through, can be really detrimental. And that's why, like I said, I kind of like to slow myself down and reflect before I react. And I think that, you know, when you talk about reconciliation and restoration, it's really interesting because, you know, I'll give you the example of, like, I know for me in the last 2 years, there have been some situations that I've had some, I think in friendships, my biggest challenge has been people that I've been friends with for a really long time, but because of the kind of political discourse that we've had, or, you know, social justice conversations, they haven't changed as people, but like it's uncovered things that we need to discuss, right? And that we both need to be able to hear each other on. And I'm actually a person who's really open to like diverse points of view and hearing people or whatever, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt my heart that like certain friends think certain things or are oblivious to certain things and that kind of thing. And so for me, there's certain friends that I am praying for restoration. In other words, to actually renew our friendship back to how it was maybe before the last few years of kind of divisiveness started to occur. Not to erase what we've learned or the conversations, but to restore the love and the trust and the openness that we had. Whereas with certain people, I do want reconciliation. I want us to hear each other, and maybe we have to agree to disagree. And maybe we will still be friends, but our friendship isn't actually going to be restored to how it was. It might look different going forward. Yeah. And I think for me, that's reconciliation. You can have, like you said, you can have both, or you could even have one or the other. There are times where, you know, there are plenty of relationships where the conflict is just so great. And like you said, whether it's one-on-one or whether it could be a group of people, you know, one business unit and another business unit, and they're butting heads. You know, I've worked in a lot of teams where it's like the creative team and the sales team just cannot work together. All these broken interpersonal relationships, you know. But it's like figuring out which relationships do need to be restored to the same page versus restored to where there's just been new boundaries set.
That's good.
So yeah,
good. Because those are nuances that if you're not careful, you can just zoom right past.
Yeah.
It's like reading a contract. You know what I mean? I hate to make it so intricate and so detailed, but in some cases, like, especially depending on the length of time that this process has been, like some of that stuff has set for years and marinated, and unforgiveness has turned into bitterness, and it's hard to uproot that stuff.
Yeah.
Just like a tree. Think about trees that have been planted in your yard for 30 plus years. That joker is big and the roots run deep.
So deep. Well, and there's times too where you want restoration and the other person doesn't, right? And I think we forget that sometimes, and then we find ourselves fighting to restore this relationship, and it feels like we can't get it back to where it was. And sometimes we have to have that, again, humbling realization of like, it's not going to be where it was, and we have to be okay with that. And that's why I always go back to, again, that sense of humility. And sometimes I have to stop myself and say, okay, Lord, let me see this situation through your eyes. Let me see their pain through your eyes. Because I understand my pain, although sometimes we need some time to figure out what we actually feel, but we understand our own pain. But sometimes we need to actually take a step back and understand somebody else's pain, because they might get over something faster than we think slower than we think they should. You know, we think, oh, that was months ago, they should be over it. But 6 months from now, they're still upset.
Listen, I've had that conversation. Someone said, you listen, move on with your life. Wait a minute. Time out.
Exactly.
Speed up my healing process.
Exactly. Yep.
The break. So listen.
Yeah.
Man, y'all, I'm excited. I don't know about you. I am so excited because, Jamila, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's more where this came from. If you guys are not following Jamila Jackson, listen, you late. You on the late freight. I need you to hurry up and get on this train because it's pulling out the station. And you guys, I have to tell you a special something. And this is a surprise. Jamila, you ready for the surprise?
Yes.
For anyone who is purchasing the top ticket, which is our permanent press ticket, any permanent press ticket holders will receive an exclusive experience box that is a combination of several different folks. So Jamila's going to show you the box. Inside, we've planned some really cool goodies for you ladies, because we realize that because we are virtual, and we're not together and we're not physically in the same spot. We wanted you to still have an opportunity to experience a little bit of what you would have if we were all under the same roof. There are certain things that in our homes, you see Jamila's office, you see my office. This is my prayer space. It's not just my office. Everything that relates to Campaign P31, from the prayer, the fasting, the video shoots, the conversations, the research, the reading, all the things that we do to prepare to be able to serve and steward you ladies well, all happens in this space. And so what we're trying to do for you, since you're joining us for this 2-day conference, is to create that same type of environment for you. And it's all coming to you in that pink little box. It might not be pink, but it'll be something very similar.
It'll be very Campaign 31.
That's right. So I'm really excited. So there's actually going to be, those of you who have been tracking with me, you also know a good friend and teammate, Alicia Nicole. She actually is going to throw some of her goodies in that box too.
Very exciting.
So you want to get in on the good stuff. And it's only a few. Listen, I think there is a set number, so you don't want to miss out. It's exclusive. We're not going to do it again unless the pandemic is still here in 2022. And Lord knows, I don't even want to think about that. So
we're just going to decide that it's not going to be here.
Let me cancel my words in Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Listen, but Jamila, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I've had an amazing time just getting at the heart of some of the restoration struggles and tensions that we all as women are facing.
Yeah.
And so understand that we're all at various stages of this process, but I think that God has given you a specific word and a story to share in this season. And I cannot wait to see and hear all the testimonies of the women who will be impacted by what you share with them today in this little short conversation with friends, but then also in what you're going to share during your breakout session at the conference on March 20th. Breakout sessions on the 20th. So I'm really, really excited. Jamila, thanks again.
Of course.
And before we leave, ladies, one last time, if you have not already signed up for our email list, please make sure you do that. I want to make sure that you are fully informed and aware of all things Campaign P31. And sometimes we'll have our friends hop on too, and you don't want to miss the morning sip. It's coming up this Saturday. All kinds of fun, special stuff as we prepare for the conference. And I'm so excited. Y'all don't even understand. Like I've been sleeping with a smile on my face.
Oh, that's awesome.
My husband's like, "Are you happy?" What's going on? I'm like, "Yes, I'm sleeping, but I'm so excited." All right, you guys. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us for The Splash.